नाजरीन आपके साथ मैं मौजूद हूँ सहेली के सेट पर। तो नाजरीन आज का जो हमारा टॉपिक है दैट इज़ रिगार्डिंग हाउ टू रेज कंपैशनेट बॉयज़। नाजरीन होता क्या है कि आजकल हम जिस तरह से हमें सुनने में आ रहा है कि जो डीवी के केसेस हैं, डोमेस्टिक वायलेंस के केसेस, दे आर ऑन अ रैम्पेंट इंक्रीज। तो हमें ये समझने की ज़रूरत है, अब इट्स बिकम वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट कि इसके ट्रिगर्स क्या हैं, इसकी वजूहात क्या हैं। तो हम तीनों बहनें जब आपस में बैठी एक दिन, मेरे साथ आज मौजूद है हमारे सेट पर सलीना हनीफ एंड सिस्टर आमिना अल्बा एज़ वेल, तो हम इस चीज़ को आपस में डिस्कस कर रहे थे कि जब नाज़रीन हम ये टॉपिक आपके सामने लेकर आए तो आपके साथ न सिर्फ हम ये वजूहात डिस्कस करें कि डोमेस्टिक वायलेंस इंक्रीज पे क्यों है, बल्कि उसकी वजह से जो इम्पैक्ट फैमिलीज़ के ऊपर आता है, स्पेसिफिकली बच्चों के ऊपर और हमारे मेल जेंडर बॉयज़ के ऊपर, किस तरह से हमारे बच्चे जो हैं वो इमोशनली टर्बुलेंट हो जाते हैं, उनकी जो अपनी इमोशनल नीड्स हैं वो फुलफ़िल नहीं हो पाती, वहाँ पर एक खला रह जाता है, एक वॉइड रह जाता है। और फिर चूँकि स्पेसिफिकली ऐसे बैकग्राउंड जिसमें जो है वो डोमेस्टिक वायलेंस जो है वो ऑलरेडी प्रेवलेंट है, तो क्या ये सिर्फ एक माँ का रोल है कि वो अपने आप को भी बैठ के पिकअप करे, शी इज़ ट्राइंग टू फाइंड अ ग्राउंड, वो अपने आप को भी इमोशनली स्टेबल रखने की कोशिश करी, एंड देन इन द सेम ब्रेथ शी हैज़ टू बी एबल टू लुक अप टू ट्राइंग टू रेज इमोशनली स्टेबल फैमिली एज वेल। तो क्या ये सिर्फ औरत का रोल है, काम है, यहाँ के फिर जो मर्द है, जो वालिद है, उसका भी रोल होना चाहिए अपने बच्चों की स्टेबल इमोशनल वेलबींग में और डेवलपमेंट में, और जो ओल्डर सिबलिंग्स हैं, बड़े भाई हैं, उनका भी इसके अंदर जो है वो एक इम्पॉर्टेंट रोल है। अब ये तो इमीडिएट फैमिली के हवाले से बात हो गई, फिर हम डिस्कस करेंगे कि कम्युनिटी का क्या रोल है इसमें, हमारे जनरेशन्स को, छोटे बच्चों को इमोशनली स्टेबल एक्सपोजर देने में, और फिर हमारे इंस्टीट्यूशंस का क्या रोल हो सकता है, फॉर दैट मैटर मसाजिद का क्या रोल है इसमें, कि वो किस किस्म के रोल मॉडल्स जो है वो प्रोड्यूस करके बच्चों को देते हैं, कि ताकि बच्चे उन रोल मॉडल्स को देखकर बड़े हों और इंस्पायर हों कि जी हमने XYZ की तरह जो है वो बनना है बड़े होकर। तो न सिर्फ हम प्रॉब्लम्स के हवाले से डिस्कस करेंगे, स्ट्रैटेजीज़ के हवाले से डिस्कस करेंगे नाज़रीन, और फिर इंशाल्लाह एक लाइव डेमो भी हम आपको देंगे वाइल्स यूजिंग NLP एज अ टेक्निक, और NLP के अंदर जो है वो हम एंकर्स को चेंज करेंगे, और उसका क्या उससे क्या मुराद है हमारी, कि हम कोशिश करके एक इंसान को एक ऐसी इमोशनल स्टेट में से बाहर निकालेंगे जो कि एक डिज़ायर स्टेट नहीं होती किसी भी इंसान के लिए। फॉर एग्जांपल डीमोटिवेशन हो गई, या प्रोक्रेस्टिनेशन हो गई, या डिप्रेशन हो गई। तो अगर कोई इंसान अपने आप को प्रोडक्टिव नहीं फील करता और किसी ऐसी स्टेट में है जो कि उसके लिए एक डिज़ायर्ड स्टेट नहीं और उसकी मनफी वो काम कर रही है, तो हम किस तरह से उस इंसान को स्टेट में से निकाल के एक बहुत बेहतर स्टेट में, मोटिवेटेड स्टेट में, स्टेट ऑफ फुलफिलमेंट, एक्साइटमेंट, प्रोडक्टिविटी, हैप्पीनेस में हम लेके जा सकते हैं। और ये वो टेक्निक है कि जो कि आप अपने बच्चों के साथ भी इस्तेमाल कर सकते हैं, बड़ों के साथ भी इस्तेमाल कर सकते हैं, क्योंकि आपको पता है, ज़ाहिर है कि बीइंग ह्यूमन बीइंग्स हम सब जो है वो इमोशनली एट डिफरेंट टाइम्स टर्बुलेंट फेजेस से गुजरते हैं। तो किस तरह से हम इस टेक्निक को इस्तेमाल करते हुए एक दूसरे की मदद कर सकते हैं फैमिली के अंदर, टू हेल्प आवरसेल्व्स get rid of the undesired state and bringing ourselves into a more motivated or a desired state if you like. तो चलिए नाज़रीन, इंशाल्लाह let me just get straight into it, और सिस्टर सलीना और सिस्टर आमिना के साथ जो है वो हम इस मौजू के हवाले से फर्दर इन डेप्थ डिस्कशंस करेंगे। अस्सलाम वालेकुम सिस्टर सलीना एंड अस्सलाम वालेकुम सिस्टर आमिना, and welcome on board one more time. It's always a pleasure of having you guys sit here, having candid conversations and just being able to go into the depth of the subject matter or the topic, if you like, that we're trying to create awareness around. So please excuse me my voice today. I've just had hot and cold water throughout the day, so pardon me for that. So sisters, you know that today's topic is regarding how to raise compassionate boys. Now, because Sister Amina, you don't speak Urdu, I would just give you a brief background of what I was talking to the audience about earlier on. That when is it basically just the role of a mother to be able to look after the emotional needs of the children, specifically boys, to be able to raise them compassionately? Or Selena, is it the role of the father as well, or the older siblings in the family? How does it work? How can we raise them when a mother already is going through a turbulent situation? How can she at the same time, be able to find her ground, lift herself back up, and then be able to, meet the emotional needs of the children as well? Because you see, if she doesn't do that, and what happens is, in retrospect, the whole entire infrastructure of the family just literally breaks down. the whole family gets into pieces, and then that woman is left to pick those pieces up. So in that kind of a situation, what would be the role of the father? What would be the role of the mothers? Sorry, the brothers, and what would be the role of community at large? You know, the institutions like, for example, the masjid. So we're going to be discussing and covering all of that, inshallah. So what do you have to say about it?
The good news is that when people are going through traumatic experiences, especially children, young people, the research shows that as long as the child has one dominant caregiver who gives love, protection, affection, guidance, then even through very turbulent experiences, if they have that one person, it doesn't have to be mother, father, it has to be a adult caregiver that they can rely on, depend on, be listened to, and process the experiences. So there's something called adverse childhood experiences, which are known as ACEs. And the research shows that when somebody goes through an adverse experience, depending on how they deal with it, it shows the results when they become adults. So it manifests, the outputs of that initial early experience manifests in their behavior later on in life. So one of the things that I would say is, it doesn't matter who you are. If you're around a child or a young person going through a difficult time, then you have to look out for the signs that that person might be under distress, and then be able to help that person communicate and express themselves. Because what we've learned is that much of the troubles that we have as adults is as a result of us having not resolved early childhood traumatic experiences.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So it's about having someone around you in the community or in the family or in your circle of friends who you can talk to and express and resolve the experiences that you've been through. If you can do that, your chances are much higher of turning that negative experience into something positive later on in life.
So then, how can we define that one person, the adult caregiver, to be the right person or the right role model for our child? Because you see, for example, let's take an hypothetical example that I am a DV victim and I'm going through a turbulent phase in my life. Now I'm trying to, you know, everything that's going to glitter, I'll find that to be gold. So in that moment of time, I might as well end up, you know, thinking of an adult, you know, caregiver to be somebody who's going to be a good influence on my child, and they may not really be a good influence on my child in reality. So how to be able to decipher that in that moment in time? Because obviously the woman needs help, and then the child needs help, you know, both of them are vulnerable. So my main concern would be that, what is the role of a father in that situation? Because we'll be really, really lucky if we find a third party. It could be in the form of uncles, could be in the form of, you know, older cousins, male or female, regardless. But that comes later, you know. We may not be comfortable with them stepping into the situation because we don't know who they are at a personal level. However, what's the responsibility of a father in that situation? Because we know who he is, and we know that he is also responsible for bringing that child into this world. So what's his responsibility in bringing up that child emotionally and looking into his emotional well-being, Selena?
Yeah, I think a lot of, one of the type of men that we see in our community today is that of a sort of pseudo alpha male kind of guy who is typically, he lacks emotional integrity, he lacks, his dealings in business are often quite dishonest. On the surface level, they appear very tough, but they're very hypersensitive to criticism. They're very fearful of vulnerability. They feel like showing any type of vulnerability makes them less of a man.
Yeah.
And even in the romantic sense, you'll often find them to be very controlling, very dominating,
Yeah, of course, the
very
control, yeah.
Full of jealousy and paranoia in their relationships. They have poor emotional regulation, so they have outbursts of anger, rage, and these emotions that sort of spiral out of control on a frequent basis. Now, if you look at that kind of a person as a child and the type of role model he had, in most cases it would have been a father who was not emotionally or physically available.
Yeah.
who might have used physical violence towards the child, and even put him down, thrown insults at this child, and really knocked this child's self-esteem down. And that's the type of father that would probably in most cases would shape this kind of an adult who has this false alpha male kind of personality.
So do we see a pattern there, Selena, that
Of course.
perhaps the father has been through something similar, and then he's practicing what he saw his father doing
Yes.
on him, on his son.
Yeah.
So now they're replicating the same
It's a cycle, and it's learnt behavior. Children learn these behaviors from a very young age.
Yeah.
And as I say, children won't do what you tell them to do, they'll do what they see
Yeah.
around them. So the environment that we set up for them is crucial, and how we cultivate, how we nurture them is very important. And that's from a father's perspective. Ideally, the fathers being the leaders of our homes, culturally speaking, Islamically speaking, they do have that responsibility where they have to show themselves as a grounded, masculine sort of entity who's not afraid of showing vulnerability, who's not afraid of, being grounded.
Yeah, and accepting their fault, basically, when they've done something wrong, because they are humans. It's very interesting you've picked this point up,
Aside from the father, there's also the education system is very much feminized as well, where it doesn't always fit into how a boy is developed. In a school setting, in the education system, you're encouraged to be agreeable. You're encouraged to be, agreeable and just.
You have to conform, don't you,
have to
in education? Do as you're told.
Boys generally don't develop like that. Their raw masculinity is not appropriately shaped or molded by a good male role model. And that's something that comes naturally in children, and it's about how the adults in his life cultivate that. That will either make them into toxic men when they're older, or healthy, well-rounded men.
It's the theory of attachment, isn't it? So in childhood, a child has a basic fundamental need to attach, and it means that we as mothers have to identify and give our child exposure to trusted adults to whom they can attach inside the inner circle, but also in the wider community.
So then that leads me to think then there's a huge responsibility for the institutes, the likes of the masajids. What do you have to say about that then, Selena?
It's very constricting for boys who this alpha male kind of guy cannot sit in a classroom for 40, 60 minutes focused, being spoon-fed information. They need physical stimulation. They need to be outdoor. They need to be climbing trees, fixing things. That's how they develop. That's when the brain releases serotonin for them, and that's how they develop emotionally. And if that kind of a character is then put into a setting which goes against their fitra, then they're not going to have a well-rounded sort of upbringing and nurturing that they need. They're going to be deprived of what they really need, and they're going to feel constrained. And
so then in that situation, when there is already a big problem going on in the household, now the question is with both of you sisters, we took an example of a turbulent relationship in a family whereby the mother is suffering and the children are suffering at the same time. So just to be able to say that, okay, the father also has a responsibility of being a well-rounded role model. However, we know that because he isn't able to fulfill or be that right role model for the children, hence the reason the wife is suffering and hence the reason the children are suffering as well. So then where do we go from there? Should we just leave that to it and accept that, there is an ongoing problem and these children will become the product of that system? Should we just accept it and leave that to it? Or are there any mechanisms in place whereby we can use that and the sister can go and get herself healed? And then the children can also be sent somewhere to be, healed. Yeah, definitely having a great positive role model in their life can change their life around, definitely. So what kind of strategies can the mother first use to heal herself so that she can heal the family? And then what kind of exposure should we give to the children so that they can be healed as well, and they can basically just live their life as a child, positively going forward?
It is a communal responsibility, and I think the community as a whole needs to step up and be a bit more involved in children who come from broken homes, and even for the women who are healing. We need to, as a community, be a lot more supportive and available. We need services that are more involved. I'm hoping to organise an event which is very much focused on boys, where we can bring in professional males and they can give their time and share their journey, what obstacles they faced in their younger years and how they got to where they have. And no, the role model doesn't have to necessarily, like Amina has already said, does not have to be from the family or the father necessarily. Children will naturally, they'll be attracted to certain people, and they'll find their own role model. So it's up to us to put people in their path that are well-rounded, that are emotionally and physically, they have a good balance of healthy masculinity. And children will naturally, they'll gravitate towards such people, and they'll take them as their role models. And if we don't provide that, then they will find alternative role models where they might not be able to decide who is a good role model and who isn't. And that's why we see often, you see young teenage boys maybe who don't get that emotional connection at home will then go outside, like you mentioned earlier, and will find alternative company that will give them the time and attention and the reassurance that we have your back. Children want to belong. Even as adults, we as human beings, we want to belong somewhere. We want to belong in a group. And if there's a group out there that understands what we're going through and a group that we can relate to, then we will attach ourselves to them. That can be a drug ring, it could be getting into knife crimes, or it could be the more positive role models. It's a gamble.
And it's hard to see that, as we're talking about the DVs on the increase, knife crime rate is going really high as well. It's really, really sad. So now that we've talked about a turbulent situation, say we were like a perfectly normal family, no DV involvement, no nothing whatsoever. In that case, what strategies would you like to share, Sister Amina, for any parent, mother and father, or any third party who's the caregiver, any specific strategy that you would like to share that they can use in order to raise boys, children at large, but specifically boys, into being more compassionate, and as they grow older, they become into more mature and responsible men, men who are able and willing to take ownership of the responsibilities that life has to throw at them, for that matter their relationships, their wife, their mother, other relationships, their children, and just be able to nourish a healthy community.
And that's the key word, nourishment. So we say to our clients, you cannot pour from an empty cup. If you're a caregiver, you must fill your cup first. That's strategy number one. You have to take the time. Your busy schedule, you're tired. We know how it is, even in healthy, happy homes. We're very busy people, especially working mums. So my advice is, number one, take that time to self-love, because children pick up off that. And if that person is feeling good, refreshed, confident, and something happens, they can role model how to cope with negative things happen in life. That's normal. Our job is to demonstrate to a child, this is okay, this has happened, this is how I'm going to deal with it. And you can see that life carries on, and we all got over it, and we succeeded in the end. And that's what they learn. So I think number one is do whatever you can to give yourself that freedom to express yourself, to decide what you want to do with your schedule for the week, to be creative with people around you. And then that will make you feel good, and when you feel good, that will be passed on to your children. So there, as we said earlier, their self-esteem will build and build and build. It's the building blocks of life.
Yeah.
So when they start feeling more confident that, okay, if things go wrong, I can handle it. I've learnt from my mum, I've learnt from the adults in the house, then I can go out and face the world. And that's our job, is to prepare them to be able to face, you know, the world around them.
Yeah, absolutely. So to be able to build that sense of security in them by giving them more time, more quality time, if not quantity, because life is like a run of the mill for everybody, men or women these days, and we're all running, you know, or just chasing something or the other. So how a new day starts and how it comes to an end, subhanallah, there's no barakah left in time anymore. So if we are unable to give them quantity time, then at least be able to and be willing to give them quality time. And perhaps we can do that by doing some or scheduling some nice activities around with them, you know, some activities that the children like themselves. Or for that matter, growing older, I remember we used to love having story time with with our parents. So what part does story time play in children's upbringing? Because that plays as a major anchor in their life, isn't it?
It's very comforting, it soothes them, and stories are the very best way to unconsciously program a child to succeed. Storytelling is used in corporate environments now. You'll often see a CEO come out in front of, you know, the annual conference, and he'll tell a story, and everyone will be listening thinking, what's going on here? But actually he's embedding a critical message about motivation, about collaboration. All the skills you need to succeed are embedded in that story. So storytelling, it's the audio trigger of your voice, which soothes a young person. It's the visual of the pictures and the book, and it's the quality time together. And I just want to refer to that. There's so many households where we have fathers watching TV thinking, or on their mobile. I'm not blaming the father, but I'm going to raise it because I think it's critical.
Yeah, definitely.
That they think it's okay to sit there in the presence of a child and not talk to, engage, or have any interaction with that child. They think that just by being there, that's enough. And I'm here to tell you it's not enough. It actually comes under neglect. So one of the key triggers of behavioural issues in adulthood is when a child has been neglected, and we probably think neglect means you're not even in the house, you're completely ignoring, you know, that child's needs. It isn't. Neglect comes under actually being present, but not engaging. You're absent, yes. And it's critical. So if you are one of those people, you must reflect and realise the impact that's having on the future generation, because the first thing it does is damages their self-esteem. They don't feel worthy because you're not looking at them, you're not asking them, you're not engaging them. And how are you going to feel growing up in that environment? It's not
even
healthy.
a parent who thinks that they're spending 10 hours a day, a stay-at-home mum, for example, who's spending 10, 12 hours a day with their children, will probably think, well, I'm in the house with them, so I'm spending time with them, and that's sufficient. But 2 hours of undivided attention with no TV, no background noise, no phone is much better than giving them 12, 13 hours of time where you're doing something else and you're not giving them eye contact. And this starts from infancy. You have mums who are nursing their children, and that baby is looking for eye contact. That baby needs eye contact from a very young age, even from when they're being nursed. But we have mums who are on their phones, or they're trying to multitask or do something else. And teaching children from that age the importance of body language and eye contact is very important.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking not most of them, the majority of them are basically juggling and multitasking. As I said, that life has become a run of the mill. A woman is playing so many different roles. And now with the trend of entrepreneurship, you know, it's one of those things that sisters are doing businesses from home, and then obviously because online you're connected globally with everybody, then at different time zones obviously you have to be present and available for your client. So just that little satisfaction that I am inside the house and my children are able to see me is enough for them. So it becomes a bit of a, you know, task at hand for them to be 100% with their children most of the times. For them, that little comfort that we are in the confinement of our house with our children around us, probably they'll grow older looking at that and they'll get acquainted with it, they'll become familiar, they'll come around the idea that, you know, well, at least our mum was with us, we were able to see her, we were able to, you know, have a bit of a laugh together, we were able to eat together. Mummy was just there, we saw her all the time. But yeah, that's what entrepreneurs do from home. If you've got a business at home, then you're going to be engaging, you know, with your clients. And how easy could it get, you know, it's just
so it's interesting that even if I schedule half an hour with the children, half an hour of undivided attention before I need to do something else. For example, if I need to prepare dinner or I need to do something for my business, if I schedule in that half an hour and I give them that one-to-one, they will be less anxious and they won't be troubling you while you're trying to do other things.
And they would know what
because
to
they've
expect.
had that reassurance already. So you're better off. Either you give them that half an hour to an hour one-to-one, you give them that reassurance, you give them that undivided attention that they need, and everything else does tend to usually follow on smoothly, or you're trying to get your work done and they're coming in every 5 minutes and you're losing your chain of thought, and you think you're saving time, but you're becoming less productive because of the distractions that you're getting every few minutes.
Absolutely. That's a very, very critical point out there, Selena. I'm glad that, you know, you brought it up, that as much as we feel it's important, you know, in relationships to be very transparent and to know exactly what to expect, it's the same for the children as well. You know, when you know, but you've scheduled your whole day, then obviously you know what are you going to be doing at 10 o'clock or half 10, 11. So say maybe 15 minutes before, you're going to be literally going into doing something or blocking yourself out for half an hour. You need to make sure to give that one-to-one quality time to the children so that they feel that the mum was present with them over there and they've had that, you know, cuddle time or love time, quality time with them. And then you can let them know in the end that, okay, now mommy needs to go and she needs to do this for half an hour. So that at least kids know what to expect, rather than, you know, them being around you and you're breaking your chain of thought, you're getting anxious, they're getting anxious, they're all over the place, jumping on the sofas, doing this, doing that, you know, and your concentration is getting disturbed as well. So I think that was a very important thing that you picked up on, that, you know, schedule your day ahead so that you know what to expect, and in retrospect, children know what to expect in the next half an hour, 1 hour as well. You know, so you're following this schedule through, and your kids are basically also following.
And use the resources
schedule.
you have. And I'd say if you're divorced and if the father isn't abusive or manipulative, then come to an agreement where, especially boys, they do have the opportunity to spend more time with the father. I think generally, if you go through court, you're granted, I think every fortnight you get to see your children as a father. But for me, my personal experience is, if I need a helping hand, the first person I would call is their father, and if he can take them, then that's my preferred option. And I feel as boys, I know my limitations. Of course, I can take care of them and I can do everything for them. But they need more male role models in their lives. And if their father can take them, the more he can take them, the better. They'll spend time with their grandfather, they'll spend time with their father, with their uncles, and that's a good thing for them. And I think as women as well, especially if we've gone through bad marriages, when we heal, we're able to do this. And oftentimes when the women haven't healed, it's very difficult for them to sort of let go, and either intentionally or unintentionally they can sometimes use the children to then manipulate the father. But ultimately, if the father is a decent man, and the only differences were that of between the husband and wife, and otherwise he's a really good father, then don't let that get in between the children.
Yeah, that's a very tricky
father.
one. That's a very tricky one, because you see, in a situation whereby the man is an excellent father but he's not a good husband, it's very difficult for the woman to let go as well. Because, you know, she'd be thinking, right, should I just sacrifice and carry on for the sake of my children? Because he's bad to me, yes, but he's a great father. So should I take that security, element of security, away from my children by moving, you know, away from their or by having to move them away or separate them from their father. So that's a very difficult choice as well. I've seen many a time, and specifically for that reason, women think that no, we're not going to become selfish just because we're unable to get what we want from a relationship. We're going to, you know, separate our kids from the father. And basically for that reason, they continue being in a turbulent, abusive relationship for years upon years. And they just get accustomed and used to it, and that's how their life goes.
I've seen this a lot with clients who I work with who have used that exact reason, I'm staying for the sake of my children. And I think it's really important to look at the impact of staying in an abusive relationship when you have children observing. They're like sponges, as we know, and what they see, they do. So you can tell them, this is how we do things. But if someone in the house is doing it abusively or in a different way, the child is going to absorb the action and what they see more than your advice. The impact of what they see is far greater in the long term than what we tell them. So the impact of staying and the long-term impact comes under your adverse childhood experiences and can really cause damage in later life. I think a lot of mothers are thinking that they need to stay because of security. But actually, when your parents are arguing, especially when there's a dominant one who's abusive, it creates fear in the young person. And fear creates anxiety, which in the long term has all kinds of health implications. So staying because, or for the sake of the children, I would argue it might be in some cases more appropriate to leave because of the children.
So then how can we consider that father to be a good father when he's not himself emotionally resilient and he can't take care of the emotional needs of the children, and he's, you know, misbehaving with their mother in front of them, and he's giving her a tough time? So then how can we consider that man to be a good father if he's unable to fulfill their emotional needs, you know?
A way to assess is to look at values. So what we value is where we spend our time and resources. If we value something, we spend our time and resources on that thing. So most parents would say, if I asked you, what do you value in life? 99% are going to say their children, quite high up the list. But then when you actually look at where they spend their time and where they spend their resources, it's not with the children. So the values are not translating into action. And for all of us, we need to look at how we can create actions that reinforce the genuine value that we place upon our children in the next generation. And that comes with the family, and then, as we said earlier, with the community, the wider community, the masjids. I see a lot of masjids where people are able to go and pray, but there is not a facility for the community. You know how originally masjids were built for the community? That's not there. It is in the big ones, obviously we know, but it's not in the other ones. And I think there should be an initiative. Masjids receive a lot of money for the creation of the building, for the maintenance. And I'm just suggesting that there needs to be more proactive action taken to put those resources into community building activities, like you said earlier on.
Maybe have a little creche on the side for the children, some activities whereby, you know, the children are accompanying their parents or their mothers, for single mothers, and then the mothers can, you know, pray in peace, and children can be in their own comfort whilst in the environment of the masjid. So then they're absorbing that environment, the learnings, the teachings, you know, unconsciously they're hearing the adhan, they're hearing somebody reading the Quran. That just becomes a part and parcel of their personality growing up. So yeah, I mean, that is also one, you know, key message out there for, you know, our viewers who are watching, that please make sure that whenever, you know, you're donating towards the masajids, make sure to go and speak with the head of the departments or the management, if you like, and, you know, try and reinforce the message that please, you know, on the side, just be able to create a little safe space for the children whereby they have anything and everything that can justify their emotional needs, some toys out there, somebody to look after them, and, you know, so that they can be busy, they can be playing, they feel happy, they look forward to come to the masajids and partake in the activities at a conscious level as well as an unconscious level. And that's going to be great contribution of the masajids in developing healthier communities and more compassionate children, and specifically boys, if you like. That's been a very interesting conversation, you know, we've had so far. I remember in fact, Sister Amina, you've got one son, and Selena, you've got 4 boys, and I've got 4 boys as well. In terms of your boys, the age bracket is almost similar, with maybe 1 to 2 years age difference.
Yeah.
And with myself, the age bracket is huge, with my oldest one being 21 and my youngest one being just 15 months old.
MashaAllah.
So yeah, what I've noticed is, because obviously I come from a DV background and I've suffered for 12 long years, it's very interesting to see that the children who come from a domestic violence background, they grow older blaming their parents, and they don't see who was more at fault, who was less at fault. In their internal representation of their parents, they were both wrong. And when it comes to mothers specifically, their expectations from their mothers is even more that, okay, whatever dad did, he did it, he was a man, but you should have stuck up, you know, for us, and you should have stayed in that abusive relationship for however long, you know, that it would just go. So hence the reason, because they're expecting more from the mother, they're blaming the mother more as well. However, when specifically in a blended family situation, what I've seen is that as much as my, you know, boys might be blaming me for quitting, whereby I didn't quit, I was led to leave, because obviously my ex-husband had married and remarried, and then, you know, followed by all the what would I say, the trauma that I had to go through. I was literally led to leave the house, and in a very difficult situation. But going fast forward, 10 years down, 5 years down, in fact 7 years down the road, when I got remarried, I relocated countries, came to England from Pakistan, established myself here, started a new chapter of my life, and then was able to get reunited with my children. They came on board. My relationship with my children, as much as I love them to bits, I started off the chapter of my new life in the seek of being able to get reunited with my children and give them, you know, opportunities to move on and move on and move away from their past and just live a simple and nice and nice life, a life full of self-confidence and self-esteem. I'm not sure how successful I've been able to do that. However, as I was mentioning about the expectation level, I still believe that, you know, yes, they know Mum tried to have them on board and we are here now with her. However, that doesn't change their internal representation of the expectations of me as a mother. But as much as they may love me, as much as they may, you know, despise me, their relationship with the younger siblings is very, very strong. So even though they've suffered domestic violence background, they come from that background, they have low self-esteem and all that, but they are basically working as protectors for the younger siblings. Because of what they've been through, they know what it feels like, what it smells like, what it sounds like. They don't want to expose the younger siblings to that. There are times when I may say something and my daughter, you know, Fatma, she'd come running to me and she'd say, Amma, don't say this because this is how it feels, this is how I felt. So don't expose the kids, you know, to that. Or for that matter, if my little one, you know, fell down, children play, they fall down as well, they do get hurt, don't they? So if I've not purposely, or if I've just missed tending to his need or picking him up, whatever, my oldest son, bless him, he's so careful that even before the child falls down, he'll be alert, he'll be on the standby that, you know what, he's doing this thing, it's naughty, he's going to get hurt. Even before he falls down, he'll run, he'll jump, and he'll go to, you know, save him basically. And subhanallah, I just keep on, you know, I'm just completely awestruck at the dynamics of the relationship. This is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provides you, you know, with alternate possible choices. Specifically, if you know you've suffered and you've been on the right, you've given more than your 100% to it, then these are Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's, you know, mysterious ways of providing you with befitting solutions. The same sons who may give you abuse at different levels emotionally and mentally are the boys who know exactly what it takes, you know, to feel bad and then how to save their younger siblings. So yeah, I'm amazed at that, you know, these are the same boys. And then if you had to ask me that, you know, when they tomorrow get married, what is going to be their role? How are they going to behave with their wives? I'd say I'm not really sure. Maybe they'd be replicating the same model. But
the secret that you've beautifully relayed there to the success, from what I can hear from what you've just said, is that the children have learnt the skill of communication, and in order to resolve any difficult challenge in life, we have to be able to communicate. And Selena, you mentioned it earlier about emotional regulation, that children who have traumatic early experiences often lack the skill to regulate their emotions, to label the emotion as your child did and said, look, that makes me feel, and label the emotion, and that's why we're not going to do it, so that you learn and you communicate and you move on. If they can communicate, and again, us with our children, you know, how was your day at school? If you communicate, story time's a great time to do that. They will open up and they'll tell you bits and bobs about what happened at school, what was good, what was made them sad, you know, all kinds of things come out if you give them the time and you communicate. And there's 4 levels of communication in NLP. The first level is simply hello and goodbye, which is probably what you might say to your neighbour in many cases. The second level is hello, how are you? So you're greeting them and you're asking them a question, which is again very basic. You probably do that with the receptionist at work or somebody. And then the third level is when you start asking them about their ideas, their thoughts. The fourth level of communication is the highest level, which is where we start sharing feelings. And that's what your child's doing. So at such a young age, that child's already learnt, if I communicate my feelings, I can get to an end, I can put this to an end. And that works. So that's really exciting to think that.
And we can see a live example here that we, alhamdulillah, are pretty much in rapport and in sync with each other. Look at our body postures, look at our demeanor, you know, look at the observation that we have for each other and the respect, the element of rapport there, that we're waiting it out, you know, for one person to finish off before the other person starts speaking. And most of the times I can feel that the rapport is so brilliant that we can probably even mind read what's going to come next. And I'm thinking in my mind, oh yeah, you're too predictable. There she goes again. But yeah, alhamdulillah, just on the lighter note, these are the benefits of, you know, being in harmony or in a good rapport relationship with your children, your family, your siblings, any relationship for that matter, your friends. It helps give you a boost, it helps you lift up, it helps, in fact, there's mutual benefit, you know, in it. But yeah, thank you so much, Sister Selena and Amina, for being on the show today.
I just want to say about your son and how he is towards your younger children. I think within that there must be some sort of healing for him as well. By being a certain way towards his younger siblings, he is healing the inner child within him and what he experienced as a child that young. So
yeah, because it's very interesting you picked that up as well, because I could see tears in his eyes, which obviously he hid. Now culturally, in our culture specifically, men don't cry, they're not allowed to cry. So even though he was all teary, he was trying to hide his tears and he was really good at it. So yeah, so he did that. But yeah, you're right. So he's basically, you know, healing himself, that little child in him, by doing that. And I was amazed to see that, okay, on one side, you're my son, you do mentally, emotionally abuse me, I have to deal with this now after your dad, but inshallah, I'm praying you'll be fine, you'll find your ground, it's okay, it's just a matter of time. But hey, you've got your younger sibling there who's also my child, you're perfectly fine with him, you don't blame him for being in this world for nothing, you're thick with him. But yeah, I think that's the reason why, because I was discussing it with my husband as well, and he said that, look, every child has their own personality, they bring their own naseeb, you know, in this world, they share their own kind of relationship with their older siblings, they may get along with one, they may not even get along with another. And in my kind of a family dynamics where there's blended families coming together, my children from the first marriage are not so close to each other as opposed to my older kids with my younger children. So that's also very, very beautiful to see. And I think one main reason for that could be, Selena, as you rightly mentioned, that my older children are basically healing through their younger siblings. So yeah, that was a very interesting point to highlight. But yeah, thank you so much for your input, both of you sisters, and it's always a pleasure of having you on board. I'm sure नाज़रीन कि आपने जो है वो बहुत benefit लिया होगा हमारे आज की गुफ्तगू से. इंशाअल्लाह हमेशा की तरह आज भी आपसे दरख्वास्त करूंगी कि प्लीज़ कॉल इन किया करें या हमें मैसेजेस टेक्स्ट मैसेज जो है वो ड्रॉप इन कर दिया करें अगर आप चाहते हैं कि किसी स्पेसिफिक किसी बिलखुसूस टॉपिक के हवाले से आगाही हम दें आपको या कोई गेस्ट स्पीकर हम ऐसा लेकर आएँ जिससे हम बातचीत करें, क्रिएट करें अवेयरनेस ऐसे मौजू के हवाले से जो कि हमारे कल्चर में या तो टैबू होते हैं, उनके हवाले से बात की नहीं जाती है, उनको छुपाया जाता है, या कोई भी मसले मसाइल जिसके हवाले से आपको तंगदस्ती हो रही हो और कोई हल ना मिले, प्लीज़ फील फ्री टू रीच आउट टू अस एंड लेट अस नो व्हाट योर प्रॉब्लम्स आर सो दैट वी आर एबल टू ब्रिंग पीपल ऑन बोर्ड who are definitely going to be able to share some tips and strategies, some golden nuggets with you so that it helps you whilst you're sitting in the comfort of your own house enjoying a nice cup of tea and coffee. Sisters like Sister Amina, Sister Selena, inshallah you'll see them more often on my program because I've become great fan of their work now, subhanallah, and the fact that the rapport that we share with each other, alhamdulillah, it's amazing, and you people would have definitely noticed that. And we've also shared the reason why this is coming across to us naturally is because alhamdulillah we feel that we're in sync with each other, we're on the same page, and we have the same motive, same purpose in life, inshallah, which is to be able to add value back to the community. So on that note, jazakallah khair for being with us, for watching us. Please reach out to us via text message or by calling in and let us know if you want us to specifically cover any topic in the future, inshallah. Till then, take good care. Allah Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz.